Grass types tend to have a pretty rough time in Hardcore Nuzlocke challenges, with weaknesses to some of the most common and strongest types in the game. This is made especially bad by the fact that any Pokemon that faints during the challenge is gonna have to be boxed forever. Obviously, I pick up our first grass type from the starter selection, which happens to be my favorite Kalos starter, Chespin. It is unfortunate that we won't be able to get its awesome new Mega Evolution since this game came out over 12 years ago at this point, but hey, at least we'll be able to explore the entire Kalos region. As per the Nuzlocke rules, we're of course only allowed to catch the first Pokemon we find per route, or in this case, the first grass type. Most routes in X and Y only have one grass type you can find, so in Santalune Forest, we're guaranteed to get Pansage, which is kinda like being guaranteed to fail an exam. The result is awful no matter what you do. Route 3, just before Santalune City, technically doesn't have any grass types, but we are able to pick up Burmy, we just won't be able to actually use it until it evolves. The first gym leader having bug types might seem like an insurmountable roadblock for our little grass types, but the truth is, Chespin has this one in the bag. Surskit doesn't have any bug type moves to damage us with, making it the perfect lead for us to fight since rollout doubles in damage every time we use it. It takes 2 hits to take out Surskit, which grants us enough experience to get to level 13. This does mean we pass the level cap, but the way the rule works is we've got to be at the level cap when we start the fight versus every gym leader or when we go into the Elite Four. I'm committing to not doing any damage calculations at the start of this run, and I was thankfully able to survive that critical hit infestation. There's also definitely the possibility of missing the not perfectly accurate rollout, which would result in an instant wipe and reset of the run, but we thankfully managed to pick up our first gym badge without any hiccups. The stretch between X and Y's first and second gym might be the longest stretch between gyms in any Pokemon game. This will allow us to catch a ton of new Pokemon, starting with Budew on Route 4, which is the only encounter we can get here, and while it'll take a long time for us to be able to fully evolve this thing, it is one of the best grass types we can get throughout the whole challenge. We then reach Lumio City, and to prepare to take on Professor Sycamore, I make sure to level up Chespin to the point where it evolves. I love you, Quilladin, don't listen to what anybody else says. Hold on a second, Sycamore and I have the same hair, he keeps sending love letters to my mom, and wants to give me an over-the-top gift you'd only really give to a blood relative? What a generous guy, I hope my dad's half as cool as him when I finally meet him. The reason I evolved Chespin before this fight was to guarantee that we don't lose to Charmander even though it's just at level 10. We're not exactly taking a big risk here in the first place, but why leave anything to chance? Upon defeating Sycamore, we get our choice of Kanto starter, but since only one of the 3 is a grass type, it's a very simple choice. This Bulbasaur also comes with a Venusaurite that'll allow us to Mega Evolve it as soon as we get the Mega Bracelet. For now, we'll have to settle for regular, non-Mega Evolution for our grass poison types. I leave Lumio City and head to Route 5, where there's once again only one grass type we can pick up, my goat, Skiddo. Next, I've got to power through the dreaded Parfum Palace section, and while I do, I've got time to show this video's sponsor, REDMAGIC, a series of smartphones dedicated to providing players the ultimate gaming experience. And they've just released their most powerful model ever, the REDMAGIC 11 Pro. With up to 24 gigabytes of RAM, that's literally more than my gaming PC, except it fits in my pocket. With its 144 Hz refresh rate and built-in waterproof fan and cooling system, gaming is buttery smooth. As always, I tried desperately to generate even a single lag spike by spamming as many laggy towers as possible in BTD 6, but the 11 Pro is just too strong and I simply had an awesome time gaming. One of the most important things in a phone to me is a long battery life, and the REDMAGIC 11 Pro's 7500 mAh battery delivers an amazing battery life that's extended even further by the futuristic cooling system. If you or someone you know is a gamer on the go and in need of a new phone, I can highly recommend the REDMAGIC 11 Pro for the ultimate mobile gaming experience. So check out the link in the description and pinned comment down below to pick yours up today. With our Parfum Palace business over and done with, I head down to the nearby Route 6. Here we can get yet another grass poison type, Oddish. And with the weed Pokemon and the bud Pokemon, you might think I'm some sort of flower pot head. Listen, that's not what I meant by grass enthusiast, okay? Although it would certainly be your first assumption taking one look at Gloom. And with Gloom's alluring sweet scent, we can trigger a horde encounter on Route 7, which is the only way to find Hoppip. Once we've caught the cotton weed Pokemon. I keep moving towards the second gym and head to Glittering Cave, where technically we should be able to find one grass type, and that would be Ferroseed, the only steel type we can get throughout the entire challenge, which we desperately need for the second gym fight versus Grant. Otherwise, the guy's Refrigerate Amora would almost certainly take a few of our Pokemon down. In theory, that should mean this gym is completely free, but we still need to find the dang Ferroseed. I kept going back and forth through Glittering Cave, encountering every single other encounter several times, and after an hour and a half of searching, I started to doubt if it was even here in the first place. I knew this run would be bad enough without a risky Grant fight, but after the 2.5 hour mark, I just couldn't stand it anymore. We'll still be able to get Ferroseed later and much easier, I guess just not before the Grant fight. The big risk I'm not comfortable taking versus Grant's Amora is trying to knock it out with a quad effective Rock Smash. If that doesn't get the KO, I instantly lose my starter to a Refrigerate takedown. Instead, I have to get a bit more creative and change Amora's ability from Refrigerate into Insomnia before it's able to hit me with takedown. This way, we easily survive the now neutral attack and can fire off a quad effective Rock Smash the next turn, which doesn't get the KO even with a critical hit. I guess I got receipts that Worry Seed was the correct move right away. After paralyzing us with a Thunder Wave, Grant goes for a Hyper Potion to heal back to full, but we take it down into the yellow again with another Rock Smash. After the defense drop, I'm sure another one will take it out, so I stay in, but Amora goes for Aurora Beam, which I definitely didn't think would take me out. Sorry, Skiddo, you did a great job neutralizing takedown. At least Amora's an incredibly slow Pokemon, so I can jump in with Spike and take it out with a Rock Smash before it gets to do anything else. Next is Grant's Tyrant, which is incredibly annoying by lowering your speed with Rock Tomb and then fishing for flinches with Bite. While I'm still faster the first turn, I make sure to go for a Leech Seed to get both a bit of recovery back and do some damage each turn. This ends up being very much the correct move since Tyrant proceeds to flinch me not once but twice in a row, and of course getting a critical hit, forcing me to swap out into Ivysaur. We take quite a bit of damage from Bite as we switch in, but with the Leech Seed healing at the end of the turn and the ability to go for Protect to get even more, I get almost all the way back up to full HP, making it safe to stay in and put Tyrant to sleep, which ultimately allows me to knock it out with a Razor Leaf Leech Seed combo. Pretty bittersweet victory in the end, since Skiddo would still be alive and skipping if I just would have found the stupid Ferroseed. With a slot now open on the team, I replace Skiddo by evolving Hoppip into Skiploom. We're then technically able to find another encounter on Route 10, however, just like Budew, we're not able to add Eevee to the team until it evolves into Leafeon, which isn't possible until much later in the game. This leads us into a pretty rough stretch for our grass type, starting with the first fight versus Korrina. Both of her two Lucarios have Power Up Punch and Swords Dance, and there's definitely an optimal way for her to click her moves that guarantees that she sets up and wins. This is a bit frightening, especially seeing Power Up Punch turn 1, combined with the fact that we won't even be faster after lowering Lucario's speed with Bulldoze. However, the AI of course completely throws by going for Metal Sound despite not having a single special attack on Lucario, effectively wasting a turn, giving us the speed advantage after the second Bulldoze and allowing us to knock out Lucario number 1. Having only been hit by one Power Up Punch from the first Lucario, we're in an optimal position going into the second. The worst possible outcome is 2 Power Up Punches or Swords Dance into Power Up Punch, where the last hit crits in either of those two scenarios, but it just ends up going for Power Up Punch and then wasting the second turn going for Swords Dance since we're faster after the second Bulldoze, granting us victory without losing any more Pokemon. In Reflection Cave, it's super important that we skip this optional trainer with a Hawlucha since Korrina's will be bad enough to deal with on its own. We also actually catch Ferroseed here, which is as good as useless versus Korrina's fighting types. To fight the third gym, we've got to get past Serena, and if we actually manage to get anywhere during this challenge, this is going to be a recurring problem. X and Y are the last main series game where the rival actually picks the starter that's good against yours. Basically, she's going to get increasingly more troublesome to deal with every fight as she powers up her Fennekin. At this point in the game, we don't even have any great options to deal with it. Her Braixen has Fire Spin, which means it's do or die for whatever Pokemon we choose to fight it with. The only Pokemon I have that can deal a decent amount of damage is Quilladin with Dig or Bulldoze, so I make sure to get Absol Leech Seeded before I swap out into Gloom, who after taking a frightening amount of damage from a critical hit quick attack is able to land a Sleep Powder to put Absol to sleep. This way, Leech Seed gets us back to full HP, and I take out Absol before it's able to wake up. Finally, we've got to deal with Braixen, and I've got a few options here. I can either go for Dig, which I unfortunately taught instead of Bulldoze since it does more damage, a decision I regretted heavily during this fight since with Bulldoze I'd be able to lower Braixen's speed and then outrun it. For some reason, it then goes for Psybeam instead of Fire Spin, maybe because it didn't see a kill with either, but it at at least lets me set up with Leech Seed. Braixen then goes for Fire Spin, but ends up missing. At the time, I was obviously extremely relieved, but having done the calculations in post, even a critical hit there would have probably been fine. Leech Seed prevents me from being taken out by Fire Spin damage at the end of the turn, but with all that being said, Braixen could have just gone for Fire Spin twice when I set up Leech Seed instead of Psybeam, and I would have probably been screwed. Just barely hung on due to AI being stupid, which is exactly the way I hope to live the rest of my life. With Korrina coming up, we've got to get as prepared as possible, and thankfully the level cap just barely allows us to evolve Ivysaur into Venusaur. The main problem going into the fight versus Korrina is of course her ace, Hawlucha. With Flying Press dealing both flying and fighting damage, it at least doesn't do super effective damage to our 3 grass poison types. The fight starts with Jumpluff getting faked out a turn before I'm able to set up Leech Seed and then swap out into Roselia. The plan here is to set up Toxic Spikes, which unfortunately won't work against Hawlucha despite its model clearly standing on the ground. After I set up my 2 layers of Toxic Spikes, I get double slapped and just barely manage to survive after 5 hits. This fight's already going poorly way before I thought it would. Once my Toxic Spikes are up, I swap back into Jumpluff to put Mienfoo to sleep and take it out with a Mega Drain Leech Seed combo. In hindsight, the Toxic Spikes may not have been super worth it since they only affect Machoke. I make sure to get it Leech Seeded as well to get as much health back as possible, after which I take a ton of damage from Rock Tomb. I then swap into Quilladin, who eats a Rock Tomb on the switch and then takes Machoke out with a Needle Arm Leech Seed Poison combo. Finally, this means we've got to deal with Hawlucha, and frankly, we don't have any great ways of doing so. My best option to take on Flying Press is Venusaur, but I don't really have any great moves to use back. Venusaur is almost exclusively limited to grass-type moves, with the exception of Acid, which is incredibly weak. By the time I take Hawlucha out with any of those, it'll already be at +6 from Power-Up Punch or Hone Claws. Instead, I opt to go for Leech Seed since it'll stick around forever, even if Korrina decides to heal. After the Leech Seed recovery, I'm able to tank another Flying Press even at +1 and put Hawlucha to sleep. I can't stay in, but I also don't have any great options to switch to, so I just swap in Gloom and hope to deal as much damage as I can with Leech Seed. Hawlucha, of course, wakes up as fast as it possibly could and hits me with a powerful Flying Press as I deal some pitiful damage with Acid. Thankfully, I am able to use Protect the next turn, which causes Leech Seed to take Hawlucha into healing range. This free turn gives me a perfect opportunity to put Hawlucha back to sleep. Because it's guaranteed to sleep the next turn, I might as well get as much damage as I can and deal a bit of chip with Acid. I then make a big mistake. From here, Hawlucha can wake up, which it obviously does with my luck, and instead of just trying to get more damage with Acid, I really should have been spamming Sleep Powder every turn Hawlucha stayed asleep to try and get it as soon as it woke up. I am bailed out by the healing turn, but I didn't know that Korrina had 2 Hyper Potions, so I waste the turn by going for Protect. Yeah, sorry buddy, that one's definitely just terrible play on my part. With Gloom gone and Venusaur below half health, I don't have a single Pokemon left that can take a Flying Press. Venusaur desperately needs some health back so that I can actually take a hit and attack. Hopefully, I at least think Korrina's now fully out of Hyper Potions, so whatever damage we end up dealing with Leech Seed is at least permanent. After getting some health back with Leech Seed, I swap to Jumpluff, expecting it to go down to a Flying Press, but instead Hawlucha sets up with another Hone Claws. That probably makes Venusaur irrelevant, and Hawlucha outspeeds every Pokemon on the team. At least Jumpluff only takes neutral damage from Flying Press, so there is a chance. I should really learn how to shut up sometimes. Things are looking pretty grim. I've got to send in Venusaur and just hope that it survives the +2 Flying Press. I can at least go for Protect to 1 turn to give me a bit of HP back from Leech Seed, but I'm not expecting any miracles. Except for some reason, Hawlucha goes for Hone Claws, giving me one last chance to go for Sleep Powder. Except if I miss this Sleep Powder, I'll instantly lose the run in one of the most frustrating ways imaginable. I thankfully don't end up missing. That would have been heartbreaking. With Hawlucha guaranteed to be asleep the following turn, I go for the most powerful move I can in Petal Dance, which actually even takes Hawlucha out with a critical hit of my own, ultimately granting me a very costly 3rd gym badge. I'm pretty bummed about losing Jumpluff, one of my favorites of all time and the fastest Pokemon we can get, but defeating Korrina both unlocks Mega Evolution for us and gets us the TM for Power-Up Punch. We're also able to pick up Execute on Route 12. A slow Psychic type doesn't really help us very much throughout X and Y, but I'll take every encounter we can get because we are definitely gonna need it. Before leaving Route 12, we're also able to pick up the Leftovers and a Shiny Stone to fully evolve Roselia. Before we can rush into the fight versus our fellow grass enthusiast Ramos, we've gotta once again fight Serena. In this fight, she does have pretty much the exact same team and moveset as last time, giving us a slight advantage since we now have a few more resources. The plan is to get both Meowstic and Absol Leech Seeded and Protect every other turn to get as as much recovery back as possible from Leech Seed and leftovers. From there, we take the 2 out with power-up punches to boost our attack enough that we can one-shot Breaksin with a bulldoze. The plan gets me to +3 attack at a pretty decent amount of HP once we see Breaksin. I protect the turn after it comes in for the extra 16th of health from leftovers, which puts me at enough HP where I'm able to survive Fire Spin even if it would have crit me, and then take out Breaksin with a single bulldoze because of the attack boosts. We could have definitely gotten confused by a Psybeam or crit by Absol, so I'm very happy with this result. As for the fight versus Ramos, pretty rude of the guy to rub it in that he actually has a jump love. On top of that, this thing has stab acrobatics, allowing it to 1v1 everything on the team except for Ferroseed. Our steel type still takes a decent amount of damage, but between Iron Barbs, super effective Poison Jab, and the fact that we get a lucky poison with the first hit, allows us to very reliably knock out Jumpluff in just 2 turns. It costs a lot of Ferroseed's health to do so, but with Protect, we're at least able to get a bit back with leftovers every other turn. Ramos also keeps spamming Grass Knot with both of his remaining Pokemon, which not only is quad resisted, but also triggers Iron Barbs. With leftovers, I'm actually gaining net HP at the end of each turn, making this the freest fight of the entire run so far. On our way back to Lumiose, we have our first major encounter with Team Flare, and these guys are gonna be a massive recurring problem. Sure, we can handle their Houndooms with thick fat Mega Venusaur, which only tend to have Fire Fang at this point in the game anyway, but the real issue is the acrobatics Golbat that almost every single one of them has. Once again, our only Pokemon that doesn't take super effective damage from flying is Ferroseed. Under normal circumstances, Ferroseed is able to 1v1 these Golbats. The only slight detail that introduces a pretty sizable amount of variance is the fact that all of them have Confuse Ray. As you might know by this point, I'm not exactly the luckiest gamer on the internet. A couple of times, this gets me close to losing my Ferroseed, and I'm forced to swap out into Venusaur. Not exactly ideal since Venusaur's Grass-type moves are quad resisted by Golbat, so I mostly have to rely on putting it to sleep and chipping it down with Leech Seed and Protect. This ultimately takes me through the power plant unscathed, but things got really close. With the power back, we're now free to fully explore Lumiose City. The city is near impossible to navigate due to the slippery controls and weird camera angles, and everything looking the exact same certainly doesn't help, so I take a cab to the Stone Emporium to pick up all the stones we might need throughout the playthrough. Ironically, we won't be using these stones to evolve anything right away, since all of our remaining stone evolutions need to learn moves in their pre-evolved form to be useful whatsoever. The real danger in Lumiose certainly isn't Clemont. We resist electric, and his Emolga doesn't deal too much damage with Aerial Ace and is easily taken down by Ferroseed. For Magneton, I just swap to Venusaur and take it out with a quad-effective Bulldoze. Chestnut resists all of Heliolisk's moves, somehow making this an easier gym fight than Ramos. The real problem is we can't leave Lumiose without once more facing Serena, and this time she's got a fully evolved Delphox with Psybeam and Flamethrower. To prepare for this, I bring everybody up to the level cap, fully evolving Ferrothorn and Wormadam. Including this fight, we've got to face Serena 3 more times, and the main issue is Delphox is simply faster than any Pokemon we can possibly get throughout the entire run, except for Jumpluff, and that ship has sailed. There's also basically nothing we can do about this. We don't have access to Sticky Web, there's no way to boost our own speed. This leaves me with one possible strategy that you want to use as a last resort in a Nuzlocke, which is sacrificing a Pokemon. I really can't tell you why Serena clicks a resisted Psybeam here, since Mystical Fire would literally do 8 times more damage. Even Wormadam is quad weak to fire, so it's pretty strange to see her commit to the bit, but I can't exactly swap out expecting her to continue to go for Psybeam any of these turns, so I just get as much damage as I can with Bug Bite before Wormadam goes down to send out Venusaur. Mega Venusaur is incredibly tanky, and with Thick Fat, we don't even have to worry about Mystical Fire being super effective. The plan was to go for Bulldoze and outspeed with the second one after the speed drop, but all the damage from Bug Bite only requires 1 Bulldoze to take Delphox out. Her Absol really isn't a problem, but considering we still have to fight Serena a few more times, the fact that all but one of Lysander's Pokemon have super effective moves against grass types, and the final gym being Ice, we could run out of Pokemon pretty fast. On Route 14, there's actually 2 different grass types we could get, which are conveniently both available on 2 separate routes. I end up getting Weepinbell, which doesn't exactly offer any exclusive new coverage since it basically just gets grass and poison moves. But hey, I'll definitely take what's given to me. We next have to take on Valerie, another gym leader we're pretty well equipped to handle. I make sure to start the fight by setting up Toxic Spikes to make things a little bit easier since she doesn't have any way of getting rid of them. From there, Ferrothorn basically just walls her entire team without issue, and we swiftly collect our 6th gym badge. From Route 15, our one and only possible grass-type encounter is Fungus from a Horde battle. After picking it up, I make a bit of a detour to Route 16. Here, we can either pick up Phantump or Pumpkaboo, depending on which one we find first, but it's kind of the same thing no matter what, since they share the Ghost Grass typing, and are equally impossible for us to evolve since they both require trading. Kinda bold of Game Freak to assume I actually have friends. During a quick detour to Frost Cavern, where we have to fight Professor Mabel, we're able to quite easily handle Houndoom with Mega Venusaur's lack of fire weakness. By speaking to Abomasnow, we can conveniently pick up the Abomasite just before heading to Route 17, where we're guaranteed to find Snover. We now have to prepare for Olympia's gym, and at this point, the level cap is high enough that we're able to evolve into Simisage. But Olympia isn't what I'm worried about when it comes to the gym, since before we even enter, we've got to fight Serena again. Just like before, we easily handle her Meowstic with Ferrothorn and run into trouble once we see Delphox. Here, we're once more placed in another tricky position where we've got to sacrifice a Pokemon. Preferably, I wouldn't be losing anything here, and my choice is between Victory Bell and Simisage. Simisage is our fastest Pokemon and at least has some decent coverage, whereas Victory Bell doesn't do anything Venusaur can't do better. As Venusaur Mega evolves, we get hit by a Flamethrower, which is way preferable since we reduce the damage with Thick Fat. We'd still be able to take a Psychic, it would just deal a lot more damage. Now, I don't know if I was high on Copium or what, but Bulldoze doesn't do nearly 50%. This puts me in an awkward spot where we are faster with Venusaur's base 80 speed, but if I go for another Bulldoze, we'll fail to get the KO, and Delphox will take us out with a Psychic. Chestnut and Ferrothorn won't outspeed despite the speed drop, which leaves me with Roserade and Simisage, and to get either of them in for free, I'm gonna have to make a sacrifice. There's also a decent chance that neither Simisage or Roserade is able to take out Delphox from its current HP. This leads me to sacrifice Simisage since Roserade has a way higher chance of being able to survive a hit. If it can't, I'd be losing both Pokemon anyway after dealing enough chip damage that Venusaur can finish the job afterwards. Delphox goes for Psychic, and I just barely hold on with 12. Losing Roserade here would have been catastrophic for the upcoming Lysander Gauntlet. We still lost 2 Pokemon, which means we're pretty close to not being able to afford losing anymore unless we want to go into the Elite Four without a full team of 6. And let's just say getting through all the Lysander fights deathless is gonna be close to impossible. Before doing anything else, we gotta first take care of Olympia, and this is Mega Abomasnow's time to shine. Sigilyph starts by setting up Light Screen, which just barely stops Blizzard from taking it out. In a way, this is kinda convenient, since we can both stall out Light Screen turns and waste both of Olympia's Hyper Potions at the same time. As she heals up with the second one, I switch things up and go for an Ice Shard, which despite being a weak move, still does over half since she doesn't have Reflect. A second Ice Shard takes Sigilyph out, and Slowking goes for a Yawn before getting knocked out by Woodhammer. Finally, she's got her ace Meowstic, so I swap to Ferrothorn and simply knock it out with a couple of Shadow Claws the same way we've done versus Serena. Speaking of Serena, as soon as we leave the gym, she wants to immediately have a rematch. Conveniently, Lysander at least stops the battle by announcing that he's gonna Thanos anyone who doesn't have a great sense of style. Belonging to the bottom decile of fashionable people, I'm obviously in the danger zone. Here's the deal, we've got to take on Lysander 3 times, and his team gets successively stronger for each fight. Normally the way you do this is you figure out a strategy that works for the final fight, and that'll cover you for all 3. At least we can start the first fight by immediately knocking out Mienfoo. Then we got trouble, because Pyroar's bad enough in this first fight. The one way we get through this is to stall it out of Fire Blast, which thankfully only has 5 PP. After protecting against the first, Pyroar actually misses the second. Because Pyroar's damage is reduced by rivalry since Roserade is female, my plan hinges on the hope that Roserade's special defense is enough to tank a Fire Blast. As you can see, I am able to survive that hit, and my hope was that Citrus Berry plus Leech Seed and then protecting for a bit more Leech Seed damage would allow me to survive the 4th hit. Because I used Protect for the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Fire Blast, I only actually have to take those 2 hits. From there, Pyroar doesn't have a good way to deal any damage to Roserade, and we get most of our health back as we take it out with Giga Drain. At this point, the danger in the first fight is essentially over, since we can one-shot Murkrow with a Dazzling Gleam, and ironically, Lysander's Ace Gyarados is his least dangerous Pokemon since it doesn't have any super effective moves versus Grass types. Before heading over to Geosenge Town, I make sure to evolve Execute into Executor, mostly since I really don't want to lose any other of my Pokemon, and I need something on standby as a sacrifice. On to fight number 2, and this is probably the biggest leap in difficulty since Mienfoo and Murkrow are now fully evolved. This creates a new problem since even though Dazzling Gleam would probably get the KO, we can't outspeed Mienshao with Roserade. Mienshao's a big problem here. It's got acrobatics to hit everything else super effectively, and even Ferrothorn isn't safe because of high jump kick. Leftovers does keep me healthy enough after turn 1 that I expect to be able to survive high jump kick after seeing acrobatics as damage, and Mienshao ends up knocking itself out on my iron barbs when using acrobatics. Once Pyroar comes in, I make sure to go for Protect to stall out the first Fire Blast. I then swap in Roserade to take hit number 2, but my goat manages to avoid Fire Blast again. This of course isn't part of the plan since I can't count on Pyroar missing. My actual plan was to take hit number 2 with Roserade, then Protect, swap out into Exeggutor, and after the sacrifice, have any of my Pokemon protect themselves from the final Fire Blast. Pyroar missing just means I get to follow through with the plan without making the sacrifice. Honchkrow comes out next, and I wasn't sure if a Dazzling Gleam would be enough. I really need Roserade for the final Lysander fight, so risking it felt like a very stupid decision, especially when I still have Ferrothorn with enough health to easily finish the job. Finally, Gyarados is once again not a problem since it's completely walled by either Chestnut or Ferrothorn as long as they have enough HP. The final fight versus Lysander is by far the most dangerous. We don't see any change in movesets here, but the levels are way higher, and we can't necessarily level up any higher without risking over-leveling Wulfric. Mienshao is first, and I once again lead with Ferrothorn to eat the incoming acrobatics. After Iron Barb's damage, an Iron Head takes Mienshao down below half, so there's no reason for me to not go for Protect, since if it goes for High Jump Kick, it just takes itself out. The one problem with it is it brings in Pyroar, and I can't Protect the first turn to get rid of a Fire Blast. I desperately need Ferrothorn for the final gym, so I have no choice but to send in Exeggutor, who promptly gets scrambled. I still need to stall out 4 more Fire Blasts, so I send in Pumpkaboo to protect against the second. With a Held Eviolite, I was kind of hoping for Pumpkaboo to survive this, but nope, it gets completely roasted in one go. Confidently, I can at least send back in Roserade to protect against Fire Blast number 4, which only leaves 1 more PP. At least I know I'll be able to survive 1. Wait, that wasn't even a critical hit? I guess the added levels on Pyroar gave it enough power to knock me out. It just seemed like such a massive damage increase. Regardless, Roserade did technically do its job and stall out all the Fire Blasts so we can knock out Pyroar with Chestnut. Versus Honchkrow, I once again send in Ferrothorn to deal with it, and Gyarados is no match for Chestnut even as a Mega Evolution. Losing 3 Pokemon in this fight means we've lost over half of the possible encounters we can find in the game. To start filling the team back up again, I bring Foongus out of the box and evolve it into a Moongus. And once we get to Kuraway Town, we can finally pick up Lombre. Great timing, buddy, just fantastic. At least this gives us a second Pokemon that takes neutral damage from Ice, and we'll actually have a Water type for the final showdown with Delphox, but I really needed you like half the game ago. On Route 19, there are 2 possible grass types for us to find, the first being Weepinbell, which we can fully ignore because of Dupe's Claws, and the second being the final grass type encounter of the game, Carnivine. Levitate really doesn't do much for us since we don't care much about ground type moves, but at least we have another Pokemon with Crunch since the demise of Simisage. This leaves us with one final gym challenge, and frankly, I'm just as afraid of all the gym trainers as I am of the gym leader. Usually in a Nuzlocke, gym trainers barely register as a passing thought, but this time I was pretty worried since our grass types have had a pretty tough time so far. I was most worried about this Mamoswine, but as soon as it went for Mist turn 1, I knew we'd get through these trainers without losing any Pokemon. But all of that is thanks to Ferrothorn, since I'm pretty sure we'd be losing Pokemon left and right without it. The final gym fight is versus Wulfric, and normally one of the easiest fights in the entire game. That's of course if you have a team that doesn't wither at the sight of frost. The best I can do is Mega Evolve Venusaur to at least effectively get rid of my ice weakness. A Sludge Bomb unfortunately doesn't quite take out Abomasnow, but at least I get the poison to guarantee that it falls at the end of the turn. Cryogonal comes out second with a Confuse Ray, so I of course spend the turn hitting myself in confusion. I switch to Ferrothorn, who takes a ton of damage from a couple of Ice Beams, one of them being a crit, before knocking out Cryogonal with an Iron Head. This just leaves Avalugg, a Pokemon I really can't switch anything into, so I go for Protect to try and get as much HP back from leftovers as possible. This is further helped by the fact that I actually get a flinch with my Iron Head, so I can protect the following turn for 3 total turns of leftovers. The first turn Avalugg's actually able to do anything, it sets up its attack and defense with Curse. This would be extremely scary if Ferrothorn didn't just immediately crit the next turn to completely bail me out of the situation. Sorry Wulfric, maybe next time. With our final gym badge collection expected, we start making our way through Victory Road. The biggest obstacle here is of course the final showdown versus Serena's Delphox. And while I could try to come up with a strategy to try and keep all of my Pokemon alive, I've got 7 Pokemon in my box, plus an Eevee that I haven't even evolved yet, so there's really no reason not to play this as safe as possible and get myself a free switch into Ludicolo by sacrificing Carnivine. This way we easily knock out Delphox one last time and lock in our final 6 for the Elite Four. To kick off my final 6, I of course have to bring Spike for his amazing matchup versus Wikstrom. Mega Venusaur is another no-brainer, it's probably the best Pokemon we have. Ferrothorn is one of the most used Pokemon of all time in competitive singles, so not bringing it to the Elite Four would be a terrible mistake. Amoonguss is here too. Abomasnow is our only other Mega and gives us an answer to Drasna's Dragons, and I of course bring Ludicolo since otherwise we probably just instantly lose to Malva. Speaking of Malva, I decide to take her on first, despite it looking like our worst matchup on paper. Her lead Pyroar has both Flamethrower and Wild Charge, but Ludicolo's unique typing allows it to take neutral damage from both of those otherwise super effective hits. With no one-hit KOs or super effective moves available, Malva instead goes for a Noble Roar to lower my attack and special attack as I set up Rain Dance. This has 2 effects. First, we activate Ludicolo's Swift Swim ability so that we're faster than all of Malva's Pokemon. Even her Talonflame with base 126 speed stands no chance against our doubled 70. The other bonus is Rain boosts our water type damage by 50%, so even though we got our special attack lowered, we're still left with more than enough power to take out all of Malva's Pokemon in 1 hit each. And I gotta say, it feels pretty good to get Malva out of the way. Second, I decide to take on Siebold since it's by far our best matchup. He leads with Clawitzer, so I immediately Mega Evolve Venusaur and knock it out with a single Energy Ball. Starmie comes out second, but considering I'm at full HP, I figure I can take a Stab Psychic and stay in as it sets up with Light Screen. Starmie then hits me with the Psychic, which I survive pretty comfortably considering I could have taken the critical hit, and then fire off another Energy Ball to knock Starmie out. Once Gyarados comes in, I immediately make the switch to Ferrothorn. Siebold opts for Dragon Dance as I switch, so we gotta act quick before things get out of hand. He doubles his attack with a second one as I go for Thunderbolt, and as soon as I see the damage, I remember he's still got Light Screen. After a third Dragon Dance, my second Thunderbolt takes Gyarados into the yellow, and Light Screen finally wears off. I stay in since Gyarados doesn't have any super effective moves, and Ferrothorn gets to show exactly how tanky it is and knock out Gyarados with a third Thunderbolt. We do have to be a bit careful with Ferrothorn against Barbaracle since it does have Cross Chop, so I make the switch to Chestnut, who first deals a bit of chip damage with things like Leech Seed and Spiky Shield, and finally picks up the KO with an Earthquake. Third, I decide to take on Wikstrom and his Steel types, and unfortunately, our Grass type moves don't really do much for the rest of the challenge. Both Wikstrom's Steel types and Drasna's Dragons resist Grass, so I'm gonna have to rely on my coverage moves. Klefki starts the fight by setting up a layer of spikes, and then just goes for Torment, which allows me to pick up the KO with another Earthquake. Probopass comes out second, so I put it to sleep, break it sturdy with an Energy Ball, and finish it off with a quad-effective Earthquake. As for Scizor, we don't really want to stay in with Venusaur, but because we're faster, I might as well go for a Sleep Powder to put it to sleep before switching out. With my luck, Scizor of course immediately wakes up and then gets a critical hit with X-Scissor. I probably shouldn't have, but I stay in just to get a little bit extra Iron Barbs damage to maybe land a paralysis with Thunderbolt. But hey, I should probably listen to the universe's hints instead of fishing for luck. I use Spiky Shield and Leech Seed to chip down Scizor until it's low enough where I'm confident I'll take it out with a Hammer Arm. Forgive me for playing it safe, the thing has a lot of defense. Once Aegislash comes out, I go for Spiky Shield to draw it out of its shield form. This is a massive gamble since I'm hoping that Wikstrom goes for King Shield the following turn so that I'm free to set up Leech Seed. Because I'm not doing any calcs, I have no idea if Chestnut can even take a hit at this amount of HP, but after a couple of turns of Leech Seed recovery, once I go for Spiky Shield, I feel a lot more comfortable taking a hit. It looks like I should have survived based on this Iron Head damage, but there could have always been a higher roll. I'm just glad things worked out because we're getting so close. Finally, the last member of the Elite Four before we get to take on the champion is Drasna and her dragons. Drasna leads with the Poison Dragon Dragalge, so I need to use something that doesn't take super effective damage from poison. After a Sleep Powder, Dragalge stays asleep for long enough that I can knock it out with a couple of Earthquakes without taking any damage myself. Noivern is pretty much our Grass type's worst nightmare. It outspeeds the entire team, quad resists Grass, and has both Air Slash and Flamethrower. Just like versus Delphox, I could try and come up with a strategy that doesn't lose any Pokemon, but without calcs, it's just too risky, especially when I can guarantee to take it out in one hit it at the guaranteed cost of just one team member with Mega Abomasnow's Ice Shard. This is the main reason I fought Drasna last, since I didn't see another great way around Noivern. It does mean we're gonna have to go into the final fight versus Diantha with only 5 Pokemon, which isn't exactly ideal, but at least I got to choose which Mon to boot off the team. Mega Abomasnow cleans up the last 2 dragons with a couple of blizzards, which means we only have one fight left. Champion Diantha has a pretty diverse team, which unfortunately includes a ton of Pokemon you hate to see with a team full of grass types. This includes her first Pokemon, Hawlucha, which took out half of our team the last time we saw one. That time, Venusaur didn't have any good moves to use, but now we've got Sludge Bomb. Hawlucha doubles its attack with Swords Dance, and we unfortunately miss Sleep Powder. Initially, I expected letting Hawlucha double its attack for free would be basically game over, but Mega Venusaur is just that good, barely taking any damage from the Poison Jab even after +2. It even gets a critical hit, one-shotting Hawlucha after Diantha heals up with a full restore. Once Aurorus comes out, I instantly put it to sleep and actually succeed this time. And because Diantha fails to get the first turn wake up, I'm able to knock it out with a couple of energy balls before it gets to even make a move. In my excitement, I even try to put Goodra to sleep, which just raises its attack. Thankfully, Sap Sipper doesn't boost its special attack, in which case we'd be in pretty deep trouble. Even after all the Nuzlockes I played, sometimes you just forget to check the opponent's ability. Figuring I can still take another hit, I go for a Sludge Bomb and get Goodra poisoned before it takes me into the red with a Dragon Pulse. At this point, I've got to switch, so I send in Abomasnow. This tree's so slow it's essentially stationary, so to make sure I move first, I go for Ice Shard, which thankfully is enough to take Goodra out at just below half HP. That being said, I don't want to get outsped and blasted to bits by a Head Smash once Tyrantrum comes out, so I switch in Chestnut to take the hit. I then let Spike do what Spike does best, being spiky. And once Tyrantrum's low enough, I pick it off with a super effective Earthquake. With Earthquake and Hammer Arm as its only attacking moves, Chestnut basically can't hurt Gourgeist, so I swap out into Ludicolo. And this is where I get to experience the horrors of Trick or Treat. By adding the Ghost type to Ludicolo, Phantom Force will now be super effective, so I swap out into Abomasnow before it hits me. The Phantom Force deals a ton of damage on the switch, and my dumb behind, thinking I could at least get a bit of chip damage with a priority Ice Shard, gets out prioritized and taken out by a Shadow Sneak. When Ludicolo comes in, Gourgeist once again changes my type to Ghost with Trick or Treat, and I just barely fall short of the KO with an Ice Beam. This causes Diantha to heal up with a full restore, giving me a free turn to take Gourgeist back into the red with an Ice Beam. This once again causes Diantha to heal up, and I bring her right back down the same turn. Realizing it's a lost cause to try and heal, Diantha now switches it up and goes for Phantom Force, so I swap out into Spike. All I can do is click a resisted Earthquake here as Gourgeist goes for Trick or Treat, and hope it does enough to take it out. It of course doesn't. Unfortunately, I'm running out of options here, since switching would put me in a terrible position versus Mega Gardevoir. In the end, I decide to let my starter go so I can get a free switch into Venusaur, which is my only Pokemon I still have that's able to outspeed Gourgeist. With Mega Venusaur's jolly nature and the possible speed IVs that I could have picked up along the way, it's not even impossible for it to outspeed Gardevoir, despite Gardevoir having 20 more base speed. This ends up being the case, and I deal a ton of damage with a super effective Sludge Bomb, but it's not quite enough, even with poison. With Venusaur gone, both of my remaining Pokemon are slower, and Diantha still has one more full restore. I could try and take it out with Iron Head, but why risk it failing to get the KO when I've got access to the nuclear option? And so, in true Antler Boy fashion, we go out with a bang and take Diantha with us, resulting in a very narrow victory with only Ludicolo left alive. Grass types seem to always have a terrible time in Nuzlocke, so I'm really glad they managed to make it all the way. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, why not leave a like and subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss the next randomizer.